The sun had just set over Earth when the message was broadcast to every corner of the planet. It started with a chilling hum, a deep alien sound that no one could ignore. Then the voice came through, speaking in a language that was unfamiliar, yet it seemed to cut through the air like a sharp knife. The image on the screen shifted, revealing a massive alien face, one that was both terrifying and majestic. The alien general's voice echoed through every city, across every home, and into every human ear. "We are the Vlorian Empire. You, humans, have grown too powerful. The galaxy belongs to us. Your world is ours to take. Your war is over before it begins." His words sent a shockwave of fear and disbelief through the human race. For years, humanity had been slowly expanding into the galaxy, discovering new worlds, making new allies. But now, it seemed all of that had come to an end. In Earth's capital, the world leaders gathered in a room, a large round table surrounded by officials, military leaders, and diplomats. Panic was evident on every face. No one knew how to respond. They had never faced an enemy like this before. The Vlorian Empire was vast, with technology far beyond anything humanity had ever dreamed of. Ships that could move faster than light, weapons that could tear through entire fleets, and an army with strength that humans could not even imagine. President Samuel Bennett stood at the head of the table, his face pale. "We need a plan, now," he said, his voice steady despite the fear creeping into his mind. The room fell silent. Everyone knew the odds were impossible. How could humanity fight back? How could they stand against an empire that had already destroyed countless civilizations? The room buzzed with discussions, but no solution seemed to stand a chance. Meanwhile, in a small corner of the Earth, a different figure watched the broadcast with a calm expression. They were not a general, not a politician, but someone who had lived in the shadows, quietly observing the world. Their name was unknown to most, but they had once been one of humanity's most brilliant tacticians. Their mind, sharp as a blade, had helped win battles that no one thought possible. They had disappeared from the public eye years ago, but now, with the galaxy in danger, they couldn't stay hidden any longer. The figure sat back in their chair, eyes narrowed, thinking deeply. "So they think humanity is weak," they murmured to themselves. "They think we're easy to destroy." A small smile crossed their lips. "They've underestimated us. That will be their downfall." This person, despite their quiet life, knew exactly what needed to be done. They stood up and began to prepare, gathering what little they had left from the past. Old maps, forgotten strategies, and a deep understanding of the enemy. Time was running out. The Vlorian Empire was coming, and humanity's survival would depend on their ability to think beyond brute force. They had no intention of waiting for the Vlorian fleet to wipe them out. The war had just begun, but humanity's fight back had already started in the mind of one individual who refused to let Earth fall. As the Vlorian fleet neared Earth, panic continued to spread across the planet. Governments scrambled to prepare for the inevitable invasion, but their efforts seemed futile. Human defenses were weak compared to the alien empire's strength. The news reports were filled with endless questions and desperate pleas for answers, but no one had a solid plan. Meanwhile, in a quiet, secluded house on the outskirts of a small town, the mysterious figure known only as Marcus sat in front of a map, his eyes scanning it with intense focus. His room was simple, old military books stacked high on the shelf, and in the corner, a dusty chessboard. He was alone, just the way he liked it. The weight of the world rested on his shoulders, but he didn't seem to mind. His mind was a steel trap, quick and sharp, and he knew what he had to do. Marcus had been a tactician once, helping Earth's military win battles that seemed impossible. But after a secret mission gone wrong, he had vanished. He didn't want fame or glory. He only wanted peace. But now he had no choice. The Vlorian Empire had underestimated humanity, and that was a mistake he knew they would regret. Sitting back, Marcus pulled out a set of plans, He had studied the Vlorian Empire's tactics before. He knew their strengths and weaknesses better than anyone. Despite their advanced technology, they lacked something humanity had in abundance: unpredictability. Marcus's mind worked quickly, forming a plan that could shift the balance of the war in humanity's favor. At the same time, Earth's military was in disarray. Generals, soldiers, and scientists were all desperate to figure out how to stop the alien invaders. The Vlorian ships hovered above Earth, their massive size and power intimidating. But Marcus knew that brute force alone wouldn't win this war. Humanity's greatest strength had always been their ingenuity, their ability to think in ways that others couldn't predict. Without hesitation, Marcus contacted the highest-ranking military officials. At first, they were skeptical. Who was this person? Why should they trust someone who had disappeared years ago? But as soon as Marcus began to speak, outlining his plan in precise detail, their doubts faded. He knew exactly what he was talking about. "We don't have the firepower to fight them head-on," Marcus said over the secure video call, his voice calm and steady. "But we have something they don't. We think differently. We'll use their own technology against them, create confusion within their ranks. I've got a plan that'll make them doubt everything they know about us." It wasn't much time, but it was enough. The military quickly agreed to work with Marcus, preparing their forces for a counterattack that would rely more on strategy than weapons. They weren't going to face the alien fleet directly. Instead, they would exploit weaknesses, strike where the Vlorian Empire least expected it. As the plan started to take shape, Marcus felt a surge of confidence. He wasn't just fighting for survival. He was fighting to prove that humanity was more than a target, more than a species to be wiped out. The fight for Earth was about to become something the aliens would never forget. The countdown to the final battle had begun. But the real battle wasn't in space. It was in the minds of those who dared to defy the impossible. The sky above Earth darkened as the Vlorian fleet arrived in full force. Thousands of massive ships descended from the stars, their sleek, metallic surfaces gleaming under the light of distant suns. The ships moved with perfect precision, as though they were a single unit, controlled by one mind. Each one was larger than any human-made vessel, bristling with weapons that could destroy entire cities in seconds. It was a sight that made even the bravest soldiers freeze with fear. The world watched in stunned silence as the first alien ship entered Earth's atmosphere, its shadow casting a chill over the landscape. Military forces scrambled, sending out their best fighters and preparing every defense possible. But deep down, they all knew it was useless. The Vlorian Empire had far superior technology. No matter how fast the human ships were, or how many weapons they launched, they would never be able to stand up to such power. In the midst of the chaos, Marcus sat in a small, dimly lit room, watching the live broadcasts of the alien fleet's arrival. His mind was clear, focused, but the pressure weighed heavily on him. He had spent years preparing for this moment, studying the Vlorian forces, learning their tactics, and understanding their technology. But now, with the fate of the planet hanging in the balance, Marcus knew it was time to act. His plan was risky, but it was the only hope humanity had. He wasn't going to fight the aliens with brute force. That was impossible. Instead, Marcus would use their biggest weakness against them: their arrogance. The Vlorian Empire believed they were invincible, that nothing could defeat them. They didn't expect humanity to fight back with anything other than desperation. The military was still reeling from the shock of the alien arrival. Soldiers rushed to their stations, commanders barked orders, and technicians worked frantically to deploy Earth's best weapons. But despite all the preparation, there was a sense of helplessness in the air. Everyone knew that the alien ships were far too advanced for human weapons to have any real effect. In the midst of the confusion, Marcus stepped forward, his presence immediately commanding attention. He wasn't a high-ranking officer or a well-known leader, but when he spoke, people listened. The time had come for the humans to show the Vlorian Empire just what they were capable of. "We don't have much time," Marcus said calmly, his eyes scanning the gathered military officials. "The Vlorian fleet is here, and they're expecting us to roll over and surrender. We can't fight them head-on, but we don't need to. We're going to disrupt their communication systems, hack their technology, and create chaos within their ranks. We're going to show them that we're not just some weak species to be crushed." The room went silent as the human leaders processed his words. Some of them were skeptical. Could such a plan work? But Marcus had a plan, and the time to hesitate was over. The alien fleet was closing in on Earth, and humanity had no other choice but to take this risk. As the Vlorian ships loomed above, preparing to strike, humanity's last chance for survival was about to unfold. The battle was far from over, and Marcus was ready to lead the charge. The world's fate rested in his hands. The Vlorian fleet loomed above Earth, casting long shadows over the cities below. They were ready to strike, their weapons primed and their technology far beyond anything humanity could hope to match. The air was thick with tension, but deep within Earth's military headquarters, Marcus remained calm. He had a plan, and now it was time to put it into action. The human forces, who had been scrambling to prepare for the alien attack, were now rallying under Marcus's guidance. The usual chaos had turned into organized confusion, a strategy that relied on the Vlorian expectation of order and predictability. The plan was simple, but risky. Instead of directly fighting the alien fleet, the humans would create chaos within their ranks, using their own technology and unpredictability as weapons. Marcus gathered the top military commanders into a secure briefing room. The weight of the situation hung in the air, but Marcus's calm demeanor seemed to steady everyone. "The Vlorian Empire is powerful, but they underestimate us," Marcus said, his voice steady. "We're not going to beat them with strength. We'll do it by making them doubt themselves. We'll confuse them, disrupt their systems, and strike where they least expect it." The military leaders exchanged uncertain glances. It was a dangerous gamble, but they had no other options. Humanity's survival depended on it. The first step of Marcus's plan involved hacking into the Vlorian fleet's communication system. The aliens had high-tech encryption, but Marcus had spent years studying their language and technology. He knew the weaknesses. Working quickly, he and a small team of expert hackers began infiltrating the Vlorian communication networks, sending false orders to their fleet and creating confusion in their command structure. As the Vlorian fleet received conflicting orders, chaos began to spread among their ships. Ships that were supposed to attack Earth's military bases suddenly turned on each other, firing upon their own fleet in confusion. The Vlorian commanders were furious, unable to figure out what was happening. They couldn't comprehend how their perfect fleet was falling apart. While the aliens were distracted by this unexpected chaos, the human forces launched their own surprise attacks. Small, fast ships darted in and out of the Vlorian lines, targeting weak points and retreating before the aliens could react. The Vlorian fleet was no longer the unstoppable force they had once been. For the first time, humanity's unpredictability had leveled the playing field. But the Vlorian Empire was not an easy enemy to defeat. As the confusion spread, the alien general in charge of the invasion, a cold and calculating leader, ordered a full counterattack. The Vlorian fleet began to regroup, and their ships took up positions, ready to crush the human forces once and for all. They had not yet realized the full extent of humanity's new tactics. Marcus watched the battle unfold from his command center, a grim smile on his face. The first stage of the plan had worked. The Vlorian fleet was confused and vulnerable. Now, it was time to hit them where it hurt the most. "We're not finished yet," Marcus muttered, his eyes locked on the screen. "This is just the beginning." The fight was far from over, but the humans had already proven one important thing. They could think differently. They could adapt, and they could outsmart an enemy that thought it was invincible. With every passing moment, the odds seemed to shift in humanity's favor. The Vlorian Empire was not as unstoppable as they had believed. The battle above Earth raged on, and the tide of the conflict had started to shift. The Vlorian fleet, once confident in their overwhelming power, now faced confusion and disorder. Their ships fired on each other, their communication systems scrambled, and their once perfect coordination was in shambles. It was exactly what Marcus had hoped for. But the alien general, watching from his flagship, was not one to be easily fooled. He quickly realized that the attacks on his fleet were no accident. Someone, or something, was causing this chaos. His anger boiled over, and he ordered his fleet to stop firing on each other. The time had come to crush the humans once and for all. As the Vlorian fleet began to regroup, Marcus knew that the window of opportunity was closing fast. The Vlorian Empire would soon recover from the confusion, and if humanity didn't act quickly, their small victory would fade into nothing. He turned to the team of human commanders who had rallied to his side. They were ready, determined, and willing to take the fight to the aliens. "We don't have much time," Marcus said, his voice calm but urgent. "We've disrupted their systems, but they're not beaten yet. It's time for the counterattack." The plan was simple. While the Vlorian fleet was distracted, human forces would launch a series of surprise strikes on their most vulnerable targets. The aliens had underestimated humanity's ability to adapt and fight with ingenuity, and now the humans would prove just how resourceful they could be. Marcus's team had carefully studied the Vlorian ships, looking for weaknesses. They knew that while the aliens had superior technology, they still relied on complex systems that could be sabotage. The key was to strike fast and hard before the Vlorian fleet had a chance to organize and respond. Human fighters, armed with a mix of traditional weapons and stolen alien technology, shot out of Earth's atmosphere at full speed, darting toward the alien ships. They moved in tight, coordinated formations, surprising the Vlorian defenders who were still recovering from the earlier chaos. As the first wave of human fighters closed in, Marcus gave the signal. The human forces targeted the alien ships' energy cores, weak points that the Vlorian fleet had never expected humans to know about. Explosions rang out as the fighters launched their attacks, sending shockwaves through the alien ships. Each strike caused further confusion within the Vlorian ranks. The humans weren't done yet. The second wave of their counterattack focused on the alien flagship, the command center of the entire invasion. If they could take it down, they might be able to cripple the Vlorian fleet once and for all. A small team of elite human soldiers, including some of the best pilots and engineers, boarded specially modified ships, flying straight toward the flagship. The Vlorian general watched in fury as his fleet slowly began to fall apart. His ships were damaged, and his forces were disoriented. The once impressive fleet was no longer the threat it had been just hours ago. He sent out an order for his final retaliation. If the humans could not be defeated through brute force, then he would have to destroy the planet itself. But it was too late. The human forces had already struck the decisive blow. The flagship was heavily damaged, and its command center was on the verge of collapse. Marcus knew that the final moments of the battle were upon them. "We've won the first round," Marcus said quietly to his team. "But the war is far from over. Stay sharp. This isn't finished yet." As the Vlorian fleet stumbled, unable to coordinate, the humans pushed forward. The battle for Earth. The fight was no longer just a battle. It was a race against time. The Vlorian fleet was faltering, their ships damaged, their command structure in disarray. But the alien general wasn't giving up. From his flagship, he issued his orders in a cold, controlled voice. He would not let a primitive species like humans defeat him. He would crush them, no matter the cost. Meanwhile, Marcus and his team knew they had only one chance left. The Vlorian fleet had been rattled, but the humans couldn't hold off forever. The aliens were regrouping and preparing to launch a final attack, a massive coordinated strike that could destroy everything. Earth's defenses were still too weak to survive such an onslaught. It was now or never. "We need something big," Marcus muttered to himself as he studied the battle unfolding on the screens. His mind raced, looking for a solution, a way to turn the tide completely in humanity's favor. Then it hit him. There was a weapon, one that could disrupt the Vlorian fleet's technology. A weapon so dangerous, only a few knew of its existence. It had been developed in secret, a last-ditch effort by Earth scientists in case of an emergency. Now, that emergency had arrived. Marcus turned to his team. "Get me to the testing facility. Now." The journey was short, but every second felt like a lifetime. As they traveled toward the hidden facility, the tension in the air was thick. The weapon was untested, its effects unpredictable. There was a real chance it might not work, and even if it did, it could have catastrophic consequences. But Marcus knew they had no other choice. If they didn't act now, humanity would lose. This was their last card to play. As they arrived at the facility, Marcus was met by a group of scientists and engineers who had been working around the clock to prepare the weapon. It was a device that could generate an electromagnetic pulse powerful enough to disable the advanced technology of the Vlorian fleet. It was humanity's secret weapon, the only one that could truly level the playing field. The weapon was housed in a large, reinforced chamber, and as the team entered, the weight of its importance settled over them. "Are you sure this will work?" one of the engineers asked nervously. "This is beyond anything we've tested. The Vlorian ships could be immune to this kind of pulse." Marcus took a deep breath, his eyes never leaving the device. "We don't have a choice. It's the only thing that can stop them. If it fails, we're done. But if it works, we have a chance." With that, they began preparing the weapon for launch. The plan was simple. Once activated, the pulse would send out a wave of energy strong enough to disable the Vlorian fleet systems. They would need to time it perfectly, right when the fleet was at its weakest point. If the weapon was fired too early, the Vlorian fleet might be able to adapt. Too late, and it would be too late for humanity. Marcus and his team worked quickly, calibrating the device to fire at the right moment. As they finished the final adjustments, a loud alarm rang out. The Vlorian fleet had begun its final assault, launching everything they had toward Earth. The time had come. "Prepare to fire," Marcus ordered. His voice was steady, but inside, his heart raced. Earth's fate rested on this single moment. The countdown began. 5, 4, 3. The seconds seemed to stretch on forever. 2, 1. The weapon fired. A brilliant flash of light shot into the sky, followed by a deafening pulse of energy. The entire planet seemed to shake as the electromagnetic wave reached the Vlorian fleet. For a moment, there was silence. Then, chaos erupted. The Vlorian ships began to stagger, their systems crashing. The once mighty fleet, so confident in their technology, now seemed helpless. The weapon had worked. But Marcus knew that even though they had won this battle, the war was far from over. The Vlorian general would not surrender easily. And as the alien ships faltered, Marcus felt a strange unease creeping up his spine. Something told him that this was just the beginning of something much bigger. "Get ready," Marcus said, his voice firm. "The fight isn't over yet." The Vlorian fleet, once unstoppable, now lay in ruins. The electromagnetic pulse had sent their technology into chaos. Ships that had been gliding through space with perfect precision now struggled to stay in formation. Control panels flickered and short-circuited. Communication systems were down, and their weapons misfired, tearing apart their own ranks. Marcus stood in the command room, his eyes locked on the screens, watching the result of their gamble unfold. For a moment, there was hope. Humanity had proven that they could fight back. The Vlorian fleet, so sure of its victory, was now reeling, unable to respond to the human counterattacks. The pulse had worked, and it had worked better than anyone expected. The humans had not only stopped the invasion, they had broken the Vlorian grip on Earth. But Marcus knew the battle was far from over. The Vlorian general, a cold, calculating leader who had overseen the destruction of countless civilizations, would not accept defeat so easily. If anything, the general's pride would make him even more dangerous now. Marcus could already sense that the aliens were preparing their next move. The Vlorian general would not be a simple conqueror. He would be a vengeful one. "We've taken the first step, but we're not done yet," Marcus said, turning to his team of commanders and soldiers. "They'll regroup, and they'll come at us harder than before. We need to stay ahead of them." The human forces, still reeling from the initial shock of the war, had to move fast. The Vlorian fleet was disoriented, but not defeated. While the aliens were trying to regain control, the humans had to strike now, before the Vlorian general could plan a devastating counterattack. Marcus's team sprang into action, coordinating with the remaining human fighters to capitalize on the momentary advantage. The human ships darted toward the weakened Vlorian fleet, launching surprise attacks on the alien ships that had been left vulnerable by the electromagnetic pulse. As the humans attacked, the Vlorian general appeared on the main screen. His face was tight with fury, his alien features twisted in anger. He stood tall in front of his crew, radiating authority, despite the chaos around him. His voice echoed across the command room, cold and filled with contempt. "Pathetic humans," the general growled. "You may have stopped my fleet, but you cannot defeat me. I will tear your world apart if I have to do it myself." The threat was clear. Marcus felt a chill run down his spine, but he didn't back down. The Vlorian general's words only strengthened his resolve. Humanity had been underestimated for too long, and now was their time to prove it. "Target the command ship," Marcus ordered, his voice steady. "We take out their leader, and their fleet will fall apart." The plan was risky, but it was the only way to end the war. If they could destroy the alien flagship, they could send the Vlorian forces into complete disarray, and the general would lose control. The human fighters charged toward the flagship, dodging fire from alien ships, closing the distance faster than the Vlorian fleet could respond. The final battle was upon them. As Marcus watched the scene unfold, he knew that this would be the defining moment. If they failed now, everything they had fought for would be lost. But if they succeeded, Earth would be free. The human fighters locked their weapons onto the Vlorian flagship, and with one final push, they launched their assault. The alien flagship began to tremble under the barrage of human fire, its shields failing and its core beginning to crack. The battle was nearing its end. "This is it," Marcus whispered to himself. "We win, or we lose everything." The final blast hit the flagship, and for a moment, everything stopped. The Vlorian general's ship erupted into flames, its massive frame disintegrating in the heart of space. The remaining Vlorian ships, now leaderless, began to scatter, their systems still in chaos. Humanity had done the impossible. They had fought back against a force that was far stronger than them, and they had won. The Vlorian fleet, broken and scattered, retreated into the dark corners of the galaxy, leaving Earth in peace, at least for now. Marcus stood still, his heart pounding in his chest. The battle was over, but the war would leave scars. Earth was safe, but at what cost? Yet, one thing was certain. Humanity had proven that no matter how overwhelming the odds, they would never give up. The Earth had won. The once unimaginable war against the Vlorian Empire was over, and humanity had emerged victorious. But as Marcus stood on the balcony of the command center, overlooking the city recovering from the chaos, he knew that victory came with a heavy cost. The streets were filled with soldiers, doctors, and civilians, all working together to rebuild what had been destroyed. The air was thick with both relief and grief, and the mood was somber. Humanity had proved itself stronger than anyone had ever thought possible. The Vlorian fleet had been shattered, their general defeated. The shockwave of that victory spread across the world, but the damage caused by the battle was far-reaching. Cities had been destroyed, and many lives had been lost. Yet there was a strange sense of unity that had never existed before. For the first time, Earth had come together in a way no one had expected. People from all walks of life, from every corner of the planet, were working side by side to rebuild. Marcus didn't feel the joy of triumph as others did. He had seen too much. The devastation, the destruction, the sacrifices. It was hard to celebrate when so much had been lost. But the war had been necessary, and the future now looked brighter. Humanity had shown that even in the face of impossible odds, they could rise to the challenge. As he walked through the command center, Marcus passed rows of soldiers and civilians, all busy with the difficult task of recovery. There was a sense of urgency in the air. Earth needed to be repaired, and the alien threat needed to be erased from their memory. But even as the work continued, Marcus couldn't shake the feeling that something bigger was lurking in the shadows. "We've done it," one of his fellow commanders said, clapping him on the back. "We won the war. The Vlorian Empire will never threaten us again." Marcus nodded, but his mind was elsewhere. He had been involved in the biggest battle of human history, but he knew this wasn't the end. The universe was vast, and the Vlorian Empire was just one of many empires out there. He had seen how quickly the aliens had underestimated humanity. What if there were others out there, watching, waiting, learning from the Vlorian defeat? "Marcus, are you all right?" the commander asked, noticing his distant expression. "I'm fine," Marcus replied. "We've won, but I can't help thinking about what comes next. The Vlorian Empire was powerful, but they weren't the only ones out there. Earth is vulnerable, and we need to be ready for whatever comes next." The commander's smile faded as he took in Marcus's words. "You're right. We can't afford to relax now. We'll be prepared for any threat that comes our way." The truth was, Marcus wasn't sure if humanity was ready. They had done the impossible once, but would they be able to do it again? The universe was full of mysteries, and the Vlorian defeat could just be the beginning of a much bigger story. As he walked away, Marcus looked up at the stars. The war was over, but the future of Earth had only just begun. The aliens may have retreated for now, but Marcus knew that humanity's place in the universe had changed forever. The fight was not over. It had only just started. And next time, Earth would be ready. The Vlorian Empire may have underestimated humanity, but one thing was clear. The universe would never forget the day Earth fought back. Weeks had passed since the Vlorian fleet had retreated, and Earth was slowly rebuilding. The planet was scared, but it was not broken. Cities that had been reduced to rubble were slowly being reconstructed, and the world's people were united in their determination to heal. Humanity had won an impossible victory, but the cost of that victory still hung heavily in the air. Marcus stood at the edge of the command center once more, looking out over the horizon. The sun had risen, casting a warm light over the city that had once been a battlefield. The peaceful scene was a sharp contrast to the chaos that had torn through the streets only weeks ago. Life was returning to normal, but Marcus couldn't shake the feeling that things would never be the same. The war had changed everything. For the first time in history, humanity had been tested by an enemy far stronger than they were, and they had emerged victorious. The Vlorian Empire, with all its power and advanced technology, had underestimated human ingenuity, resilience, and determination. But now, Marcus knew that Earth had to be prepared for what came next. The universe was vast, and the Vlorian Empire was not the only powerful force out there. "There's no time to relax," Marcus muttered to himself, thinking back on the Vlorian general's final words. The next challenge could be just around the corner. Back at the military headquarters, the human forces were already strategizing for the future. Earth had just survived the most dangerous invasion it had ever faced, and now the real work began. Marcus joined the team of military leaders and diplomats in the strategy room. Maps of the galaxy were spread out on the table, and a series of reports and communications from other planets were being reviewed. "We've been contacted by several other alien species," one of the diplomats said, looking up from a report. "Some are interested in forming alliances. Others are concerned about the Vlorian defeat. It seems we've made quite an impression." Marcus nodded, though a part of him remained cautious. While some of the alien species seemed friendly, Others might see Earth's new strength as a threat. Humanity had earned respect in the galaxy, but that didn't mean every species would welcome them. "We need to be prepared for any eventuality," Marcus said, his voice firm. "We've shown the galaxy what humans can do, but we can't afford to lower our guard. We need allies, yes, but we also need to be ready to defend ourselves against any threat that might emerge." The room fell silent as everyone processed his words. They had won the war, but the future was uncertain. The galaxy was full of dangers, and humanity had just started to scratch the surface of what lay beyond their own planet. "We'll be ready," the general at the table said with a nod. "We've learned a lot from this war. We won't make the same mistakes again." As Marcus left the strategy room, he couldn't help but wonder what the future held. The Vlorian Empire was gone, but other challenges loomed on the horizon. The galaxy was full of unknowns, and humanity had only just begun to explore it. But one thing was certain: Earth had proven itself to be a force to be reckoned with. The battle had been won, but the war for humanity's place in the galaxy was just beginning. Marcus knew that no matter what came next, Earth would rise to the challenge. Humanity had been tested, and they had shown the universe that they would never back down. Looking up at the stars, Marcus whispered to himself, "We're ready." And with that, Earth's journey into the unknown began. The days after the Vlorian retreat were filled with both relief and uncertainty. Earth had won the battle, but the scars of the war were still visible. Cities had been destroyed, families torn apart, and millions had lost their lives in the fight for survival. Yet despite the cost, humanity stood strong, united in the knowledge that they had defeated a power far greater than their own. The leaders of Earth gathered in a massive conference hall, where they would discuss the next steps for rebuilding their world and preparing for what the future might bring. The war with the Vlorian Empire was over, but the galaxy was vast, and humanity's place in it had only just begun to take shape. Marcus stood at the front of the room, speaking to the gathered officials. His voice was calm, but the weight of the past weeks rested heavily on his shoulders. "We've shown the galaxy what humanity is capable of," he said. "But the war is over, not because we're the strongest, but because we refuse to give up. We fought not just for our survival, but for the future of our species." The room fell silent. Leaders from all corners of Earth listened intently, knowing that they had witnessed a pivotal moment in history. The Vlorian fleet had been defeated, but it wasn't just a victory over a powerful enemy. It was a victory for humanity itself. One by one, the leaders stood to speak. Some were focused on rebuilding, on restoring the cities and industries that had been destroyed. Others spoke of alliances with alien species, of new opportunities for trade and cooperation. The war had taught humanity that they weren't alone in the universe, and now Earth could no longer hide in isolation. But as the discussions went on, Marcus couldn't shake the feeling that something was missing. The victory had been hard-earned, but there was still an unease that lingered in the air. The Vlorian Empire was gone, but Marcus knew that their defeat wouldn't go unnoticed. Other powerful forces in the galaxy would take note of humanity's resilience, and they wouldn't wait forever to test them. He glanced at the screen in the conference hall, which now displayed a map of the galaxy. The Vlorian Empire's territory had been vast, but now it was empty. Other species, both friendly and hostile, were watching. It wasn't just about surviving anymore. It was about securing humanity's place in a galaxy full of unknowns. "We must remain vigilant," Marcus continued, breaking the silence in the room. "We have proven ourselves capable of defeating the Vlorian Empire, but now we need to ensure that humanity is ready for anything that comes next. The universe is vast, and we've only just begun to explore it. We've shown that we can stand up to any challenge, but we need to prepare for what might come next." The room murmured in agreement. The leaders knew that the war was over, but the work had just begun. Rebuilding Earth would take time, but it was only the first step in securing humanity's future. They had earned the respect of the galaxy, but with that respect came responsibility. As the meeting came to a close, Marcus felt the weight of his words sink in. The Vlorian Empire had been defeated, but that was just one chapter in humanity's story. They had proven themselves, but the real test was still ahead. The war was over, but the future was wide open, and humanity's place in the stars had only just begun. Looking out the window at the stars beyond, Marcus whispered, "The real journey begins now." And with that, humanity's story in the galaxy continued, stronger and more united than ever.